Hey guys, Rob Skiba here for another testingtheglobe.com video presentation. This one's going to be a little bit different. Something caught my eye recently. I was watching a video somebody else did regarding eye movement and whether or not somebody is lying or telling the truth based on eye movement. And if you just do a search online for what various eye movements represent, you might see a chart something like this one right here. And I guess it depends on whether the person is right-handed or left-handed. And in the case of this video presentation that I'm doing right now, both individuals that I'm going to portray here are right-handed, that being myself and Neil Armstrong. Now, if you look at this chart, you'll see that if somebody who is right-handed is looking to the right, it's very likely that they're making stuff up, that they're creating a mental image or they're visualizing something that may not be true. And, each of the various movements to the right represent the likelihood that the person is making the stuff up. Looking to the lower right is interesting. It says recalling an emotion or imagining an emotion, remembering a physical feeling or imagining a physical feeling. And it seems to me, and I don't know this to be at the absolute truth or not, but the right brain usually represents creativity. So is a person, when they're lying, are they just creating a false memory? I don't know. Again, I'm just making observations here. And there are lots of different pictures you can see online if you do a Google search on this topic. Like here's another one, for instance. Again, if they're looking to the right, they are constructing things. If they're looking to the left, they are remembering things or having internal dialogue. So I've heard of this before, and I was very skeptical about it. So I decided just to see, I wonder what I have done in the past. And many of you may have seen the video that I put up recently that was an elaborated version of a interview that Richie from Boston did with me. And in that interview, I was sharing part of my testimony. So here's a little clip from that. You could watch the whole thing if you wanted to analyze it. Now, I understand people look in all directions when they're talking. Something can catch their attention or what have you. But when somebody's recalling an event, maybe these charts are accurate. And when I pulled up my own testimony and watched it, I found, well, it definitely fits. I know I'm telling the truth, but my own eye language during my testimony seemed to indicate that. Whereas when you see the testimony of Neil Armstrong in an interview, somebody was asking him about various things that happened on the moon, you're going to see something rather different. And again, both of us are right-handed. So here's a little clip from my testimony, and then I'll play one with Neil Armstrong. Now, let me be clear. I never actually met Will Smith. I was working with a guy that I met through some other guys, these Korean manufacturers that I came in contact with as a result of that trade show that I did in the Jacob Javits Center in New York. They knew a guy named, I think his name was Sherwood Herndon, and he somehow knew James Lasseter, who apparently was Will Smith's manager. So he was my contact person, and I did actually speak. I believe I spoke with James Lasseter once when I was supposed to have a meeting with him and Will Smith at a restaurant in New York City. And at this time, I was doing a lot of traveling back and forth from Massachusetts to New York City. It seemed like, at least once a week, it seemed. And just networking. I didn't know anybody. I wasn't in the in crowd. I wasn't in the industry. So it's not like I had any connections to any celebrities or anything like that. I was just, who do you know? Playing the 6 degrees of separation deal, right?
Right.
And
right.
So I met this guy, Sherwood Herndon, who hooked me up with James Lasseter, who I guess was Will Smith's manager or something like that. And I was supposed to have a meeting with them to pitch everything that I was suggesting that could be a perfect fit for what they were doing as well as what I was doing. And so when I say it was a $30 million contract, that was what was when we put when I put together the business plan, that's basically what it looked like it was going to come out to in sales and all kinds of stuff, ancillary products and whatnot, that would go along with his tour, but also help me as a celebrity endorsement to put forward everything that I was trying to do. So it would be a mutually beneficial relationship. And it looked like the projected income from that would be about $30 million. And so I was supposed to have a dinner meeting with them, and I go to New York to wait on that call, and I got the call. I believe it was James Lassiter that called me and said, "Hey, listen, we're tied up. Something went wrong at Radio City Music Hall, so can we take a rain check?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." He said, "Listen, if you're ever out in LA, come look us up. I'd be happy to talk with you." So that was that. Whew, man, what a terrible season that was. And all this time. Oh, and there's another thing that was going on at the same time. While I was doing all of this, in 96, I got this idea for a script that eventually became known as the Omega Conspiracy. And it dealt with the idea of cloning Jesus from the blood on the Shroud of Turin. And so that was from like 96, 97. I was doing a ton of research. Okay, so there's my testimony. Now let's go ahead and take a look at Neil Armstrong.
Mr. Armstrong, I do realize that when you were on the moon, you had very little time for gazing upwards. But could you tell us something about what the sky actually looks like from the moon, the sun, the earth, the stars, if any, and so on?
The sky is a deep black when viewed from the moon, as it is when viewed from cislunar space, the space between the Earth and the moon. The Earth is the only visible object other than the sun that can be seen, although there have been some reports of seeing planets. I myself did not see planets from the surface, but I suspect they might be visible. The Earth is quite beautiful from space and from the moon. It looks quite small and quite remote, but it's very blue and covered with white lace and of the clouds, and the continents are clearly seen, although they have very little color from that distance.
What about the sun? Could you see any trace of the corona?
No, the glare from the sun on the helmet visor was too difficult to pick out the corona. The only time we could see the corona was during an eclipse of the sun from the moon, that is when we were flying through the moon's shadow and could observe the solar corona peeking out from behind the moon.
Looking at the photographs that you brought back, the colored photographs of the moon's surface, it seems that the color of the surface actually varies according to the angle from which you see it. Is this so? Does it do this?
Yes, it certainly does. It's a characteristic that we observe first while traveling around the moon in orbit. You could see that at the terminator, at the boundary between the black part of the moon and the lighted part of the moon, it was as if you were looking at a television set with the contrast turned to full contrast, very black and very white. As you moved further into the light, there were more and more shades of gray. But as you moved further, such the sun was higher above the horizon, you actually start to see the tans and browns appear, although at a very low level. Similarly, on the surface of the moon, the same characteristic is evident.
So, lying or telling the truth? You decide. I don't know. I don't know what to think about this kind of stuff. I haven't looked into this in a whole lot of depth. I just, like I said, I happened to see a video on it and decided to test it, go test what's being said and use an example of myself remembering something and telling a story, and having an example of an astronaut remembering or supposedly remembering something and telling a story. So, yeah, I don't know how dogmatic you can get about stuff like this, but I gotta say, that's kind of interesting. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video presentation. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video, and share it on your favorite social media sites. There's a lot more to come, so stay tuned and we'll see you back next time.